office, such as I did 10 years ago, you hope to hear, "It's a cold, never again." Advocating for patients and medical marijuana with my newfound energy and strength every single day. 3 years ago, my son had a guest speaker in one of his classes. The topic was drugs and how damaging they are to oneself. When the discussion of marijuana arose, my son, 10 years old at the time, spoke up and said, "Well, not all marijuana can be bad." When asked why, he responded, "Because it brought my mommy back to life." My son is right. Medical marijuana saved my life, and I hope that it can save so many others. Thank you, Governor Murphy. The actions that you're taking will save hundreds, if not thousands. I was born and raised in Sayreville. I'm now proudly raising my children in Sayreville, the same town I was raised in, sending them to the same schools. Thanks to medical marijuana, I'll be able to continue watching them grow up, maybe one day raise their kids in Sayreville too. I'd now like to introduce a true leader and champion, fight so many others like me throughout the state, Governor Phil Murphy. Thank you.
So impressed, so impressed. Wow. That's a tough act to follow. And on top of everything else, let's hear for Sayreville.
Thank you.
Right up the road from me. Good morning, everyone. Sorry we're a few minutes behind. Thank you, Aubrey, for telling your story. We are here today for people just like you, many of whom are right with us, who have been failed by a system that has been prevented from fully delivering the compassionate care that you and many others were promised nearly a decade ago. To you and to all who have struggled through the bureaucratic nonsense thrown at you for too long, help is finally on the way. And today, of all days, we mean it. It is an honor to be with you today. It is also an honor to be with Deputy Commissioner of Health, Jackie Cornell, with patients, with families, dispensary owners, and advocates. Jackie is an outstanding professional in her own right. You'll hear from her in a minute. She is, on this particular day, pinch hitting for our acting Commissioner of Health, Dr. Sharif El-Nahal, as Sharif was rushed this morning with his wife Marwa, who's in labor, God willing, about to deliver a baby. So please keep them in your thoughts and prayers, and thank you, Jackie, for, I hope I didn't violate any privacy laws there, but in the spirit of medical frameworks here. 2 months ago, almost literally to the day, in this room, and I'm very proud that this is literally 60 days were marked on Saturday, and we're here on Tuesday. We've not let any grass grow. I signed Executive Order number 6, which committed our administration to a thorough and timely review of our current medical marijuana program, with the goal of opening it up and making it work. New Jersey should have been at the front of the class in terms of allowing residents with debilitating or chronic medical conditions to access marijuana as part of their medical regimen. But the bureaucratic conditions put in place limited its availability. It stifled the law's ability to help and imparted, if that weren't enough, a stigma both on those who sought to use medical marijuana and the doctors willing to prescribe it. As I mentioned, this past Saturday marked 60 days since the signing of Executive Order 6. Today, I am announcing the steps that our administration will take to implement the recommendations of the review. And let me just say, as a general matter, the days of making residents jump through hoops are coming to an end. We will have a medical marijuana program that is compassionate, that is progressive, and that at long last meets the needs of patients. To show the commitment to a working and successful program, I am proud to announce that the acting commissioner, Dr. El-Nahal, and his team is elevating our medical marijuana program to a division level within the Department of Health and is appointing Jeffrey Brown, a noted health policy expert, to be Assistant Commissioner of Health in charge of this new division. This move will provide the leadership and prioritization that has been lacking. Additionally, we will move forward, broadly speaking, on 3 different fronts. First, we're going to make it easier for patients to participate in our medical marijuana program. Second, we will expand both access to and the supply of medical marijuana. And finally, we will join with our legislative partners to pursue necessary statutory changes to better meet the needs of patients. You'll hear in a second there are some things we can do on our own, and we're doing some. In some cases, those are effective literally immediately today. And there are other areas that we need to work with the legislature. And I'm confident that we will be able to succeed in all of the above. Allow me for a minute just to expand on those 3 principles. Our first need is to simply make it easier for residents to enter the medical marijuana program. Effective literally today, our program will now recognize the needs of residents living with anxiety, migraines, Tourette's syndrome, and chronic pain related to musculoskeletal disorders or visceral pain stemming from an internal organ, and allowing them access to medical marijuana. So those maladies, those challenges have now effective immediately been added to the list of requirements. And under these reforms, the Commissioner of Health will be empowered to use his discretion and authority in extraordinary circumstances to expand that list of conditions for which someone can obtain access to medical marijuana. When an emergent need shows itself, patients should not have to wait for bureaucracy to catch up. And again, that will be at the complete discretion of the Commissioner of Health. I'm not a health expert. I want to just raise one that I think should be considered, and that is recovery from opioid addiction. Not only do I believe medical marijuana could be an offensive weapon, we've said that before, but I think in terms of list of conditions, that's one that I'd love to see considered. In expanding this access, we will also lower the cost of participation. The department will cut the cost of registration to the medical marijuana program in half, from $200 to $100. And veterans, Leo, and others, and senior citizens will be eligible for the $20 fee already enjoyed by those on federal assistance or disability. Residents for whom medical marijuana can improve the quality of life will actually now be able to improve their lives. And I am hopeful that we will see medical marijuana as a weapon available both to patients, as I mentioned already, and physicians in the fight preemptively against our opioid epidemic. And again, I mentioned on the list of conditions that would allow patients access, but I now mean as an offensive weapon. For all the money we've spent in this state to get at the root of this awful epidemic, the fact that the medical marijuana system has been gummed up is an obvious, potent weapon that we've left on the table. We will now activate that aggressively in that fight. Now that brings us to the challenges of meeting the needs of these residents and ensuring not only a ready supply of medical marijuana, but more places for patients to obtain it. For starters, the department will immediately begin accepting applications for waivers from alternative treatment centers so they can open satellite locations. We will also seek a rule change to create separate endorsements for alternative treatment center permits to allow for the direct cultivation, manufacturing, and dispensing of medical grade marijuana to ensure a steady long-term supply. And working with the Department of Law and Public Safety, the Department of Health will seek to expedite the application process for future alternative treatment centers. Expanding access to the program makes no sense if we continue to require residents, many suffering chronic pain, to drive many miles from their home. It's time we get this right too. And importantly, the department will begin the elimination of the requirement that doctors prescribing medical marijuana appear on a public registry. The mandatory physician registry served no legitimate purpose other than to put a mark on doctors and, as I said earlier, advance and amplify some of the stigma associated with this. The department will begin to transition to an optional listing of prescribing physicians, so potential participants in the program can have easy access to a medical expert nearest to them. Along with these actions, we are committed to changing our state law that underpins all of these efforts. Since 2010, reality has never matched the promise of the Compassionate Use Medical Marijuana Act. That reality will change. We are going to have a program that works for our residents and the laws that back it up. We are committed to working with our legislative partners to increase the monthly limit on the amount of product that can be purchased from 2 ounces to 4 ounces, as well as eliminating the limit for patients receiving hospice care. The late Jake Honig's parents, Janet and Mike and his sister Gianna, are here today, and when Jake was still alive, Dad and I had a conversation about this limitation, and we committed that we would look at it, but we believe we need a law change, and I recommit to that today. We will support legislation to allow patients to register at more than one treatment center, making it easier for them to obtain medical marijuana. We will also support amending the law to allow the use of edibles for adult residents with dexterity or other issues so they can recognize the benefits of the program. These reforms are just the beginning. There are many other measures that we will consider going forward, including the goal of home delivery, to ensure a program that provides the compassionate care that has been lacking for 8 years. As I said at the outset, we were one of the first states to legislatively make medical marijuana accessible to residents, thanks to the efforts at that time of Senator Nick Scuteri and Assemblyman Reed Gashora. But sadly, we backed away from this promise after we made it.
That he was able to say that he passed away painlessly and peacefully. After 9 years on opioids in centers, or ATCs, to serve these patients. As the governor mentioned, we're adding a new set of medical conditions and reducing registration fees for patients in the program. We're also extending beyond these immediate efforts and initiating regulatory changes that will take some time. Finally, we're calling on the legislature to partner with us to make several changes in this 8-year-old law. As the governor said, a new assistant commissioner for the medicinal marijuana program, Jeff Brown, will oversee the changes we're outlining here today. He will report directly to me as part of the commissioner's desire to elevate and better support this program. I've known Jeff for years, and he has the right qualifications for this job. He's worked in health policy, quality improvement, and government affairs for a number of nonprofit agencies throughout New Jersey over the years. And he's here today and officially starts with the department next week. I don't know where Jeff wound up, back in that corner.
There you go.
I want to say a special word of thanks to my executive assistant, Caitlin Wolford, and Sue Carson, the director of the medicinal marijuana program, who are in the back there, along with the staff, who worked tirelessly on this report. I'd also like to take a moment to review 3 areas where we're expanding access for patients, making it easier for physicians and ATCs to serve these patients. Here's how we're changing the program to benefit more patients directly. As the governor said, we've accepted the recommendations of the Medicinal Review Panel to add 5 new categories of debilitating medical conditions that qualify patients to participate in the program, and this begins today. They are anxiety, chronic pain related to musculoskeletal disorders, chronic pain of visceral origin, migraines, and Tourette syndrome. We've also made the program more affordable by cutting the patient and caregiver registration fees in half and adding veterans and seniors to those who qualify for the reduced fee of $20. And we will allow patients to have more than one caregiver registered to pick up their medicinal marijuana. Here's how physicians will have an easier time recommending medicinal marijuana as a therapy for their patients. We will eliminate the rule that requires physicians to be listed on the Find a Doctor registry on the department's website. The website will continue to be available for physicians who would like to publicize their availability and willingness to use medicinal marijuana, but the physician list will no longer be mandatory. And we will recommend to the legislature that it eliminates the stipulation that certain conditions be, quote, resistant to conventional therapy, end quote, in order to be considered a debilitating condition. As we have learned, sometimes medicinal marijuana is the best and most effective option up front. And here's how the program will be easier for the ATCs to serve these patients. The centers can apply for waivers immediately to open satellite dispensing locations. And we're proposing to amend the program rules to allow potential centers to specialize in one or more specific areas of the business, such as cultivating, manufacturing, or dispensing, without having to do all three. We believe that this will add flexibility and specialization in the industry and ultimately improving access and supply for patients. The report that we provided to the governor, along with answers to frequently asked questions that may come of this report, will be available or are available currently on the department's medicinal marijuana webpage, which is nj.gov/health/medicinal marijuana. We've also created a new email for anyone with questions about the report. Questions can be emailed to mmpquestions@doh.nj.gov. The medicinal marijuana hotline is the number for current patients and caregivers. So if you have questions about today's report and the changes that we're proposing, we ask that you please use that new email address so that the hotline can remain free for those current patients in the program. We know that this report does not address every single issue that has been raised by stakeholders, but this is the beginning of an overhaul of a program that is very, very long overdue. Thank you so much for your time and being with us today. We look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Jackie. Hey, Jackie, do you mind repeating one more time the number and the...
Sure, absolutely.
Jackie's going to repeat one more time the website and the number here.
Sure. So the website is nj.gov/health/medicinal marijuana. And the email address for questions regarding the report is mmpquestions@doh.nj.gov.
Thank you for that. I think we'll take a few questions, if that's okay with everybody. This is yours, Aubrey, right?
Yep.
I want to make sure that you're good there. Yes, ma'am.
Sorry, that's...
You know, again, we typically are not going to talk about a particular piece of legislation, but there was a lot of good progress made. I think this report has pretty clearly come down on the side of enunciating explicitly what would allow you to have access to. But you could see also at the same time, and in the spirit of that proposed legislation, it's broadening this program out dramatically. I also would say, preempting perhaps another question folks might have, this isn't the end of history. So this is where we are today. I think it's fair to say, Jackie. We're going to roll this out and expand it as it is and color us open-minded as to what else we may want to tweak, including consideration of broadening it even further. Please.
Yes, the new condition 063, the petition is opiate use disorder. Is that one also going to be brought up?
At this time.
At this time, no, right?
No, just the 5 that we listed.
No, but again, that's one that I personally have a passion about, and that's something that I'm not a medical expert, but I'm weighing in with my own view that needs to be considered. Michael.
A doctor presently has to be registered to participate in the program, but I think only 1 in 50 doctors in New Jersey are registered.
I'm not sure that's right, but it's a small fraction. I think that sounds about right.
There's something about expanding that, making something optional, but I didn't understand.
Yep.
What the new rule.
Yep. So I'm going to give you my in layman's terms, and Jackie's going to tell you in the real terms. So the registry that you up until today, where you were required to be a part of, which a lot of doctors, due to the stigma associated with marijuana, were reluctant to be a part of. We're making that no longer mandatory. But but at the same time, there's a minimum requirement in the phrase. I don't know what the phrase is. A doctor needs to have the
appropriate.
there's a medical term here that you...
So what will happen today is that the list online will go away. Doctors will still be in the registry, but they will not be on the list that's public unless they choose to be. So a lot of doctors had concerns that this was adding undue stigma to them. So we're doing away with the fact that they have to be listed on our website in order to be within the registry.
But it doesn't mean that you can just go to your doctor and any doctor can prescribe medical marijuana?
What are the...
Doesn't mean that.
Not right now.
No.
That currently the law is not in that way. So that would be one of the legislative changes that we need.
Please.
Governor, the law that was passed 8 years ago, or signed by Governor Curzon 8 years ago before he went out of office, called for allowing the
Yep, the dispensaries.
Limitless, if I recollect, after the 6 ATCs were put up.
Yep.
You talk about satellites, but what are you doing to encourage newer retail establishments that are not necessarily satellites? People who think that this area needs a center.
Yeah, I mean, Jackie, you tell me if you have color on this. That first of all, I think this report is recommending that you could go from a nonprofit to a for-profit status. So that's one step, and I would think that would attract on its own a significant amount of interest in terms of expansion.
Can I ask Jackie,
Please.
the health department as private entrepreneurs, since your sixth center opens in Seacole this spring?
Correct. So currently right now, the nonprofit status has to be changed by the legislature. So that is a recommendation that we're putting forward. To add new, as you're asking, new businesses, the department will be putting out guidelines about what that process will look like. We have listed in the report, I believe that we're aiming to have the entire process done within the year. So as you know, that this takes a significant amount of time to make happen, but we'll be issuing rulemaking on all of that.
Do you know if you'll be putting a quota on the number of retail outlets?
At this time, I can't say.
I don't know that we know an answer to
Yeah.
that. Yeah. By the way, some of these things I want to make sure that may take a while, but the list of maladies that allow you access to the program is effective today.
Governor?
Some, yes.
To follow on that, what you just said, increasing the list of maladies, I believe that's something like 18,000 patients right now, something like
Correct.
that?
Correct.
It takes a while to grow this product. If you're going to make these conditions qualify immediately, you're going to have enough to meet the demand.
That's part of the reason why there's a recommendation to split up the food chain here, to allow the growing, the cultivation, the dispensing of this in this industry to decouple. And the answer is we will see. As I said, this isn't the end of history. We're making these changes today. You mentioned the number 18,000. I believe that is the number, by the way. I mentioned this, I believe, when we signed the executive order 2 months ago. Michigan came in after us. It's a similar size population. I think there are around 230-something thousand folks in their system. Arizona has 130-something thousand, and it's a much smaller state population-wise. So we will see. I mean, we're acknowledging that by wanting to break the food chain up and more aggressively push to make sure we have the right supply. Hold on, just somebody who has not asked yet, please.
The registration fee's been cut in half, but Missouri still has the most expensive medical marijuana in the country. So what's being done, if anything, on that part?
Well, you also heard that we're going to put seniors and veterans into the same category as disabled and other categories that are already allowed a lower fee. It's still expensive, but it's a lot less expensive today than it was yesterday. And our hope is to be able to continue to try to deliver this to as many folks who need it as possible. And if we need to tweak with the reality of the price point, then that's what we'll do. Others?
Would you consider allowing home growing for medical marijuana patients?
That is not part of what I consider. I mean, I'm not an expert on this. That is not part of the recommendation today. Maybe one more. You know, my gut tells me, this is a personal opinion, that you want this properly regulated. You want it properly understood. You don't want folks, even if it's within, to their credit and for all the right reasons. My gut would be no, but that's a personal opinion. Maybe one more, please.
Governor, what is the immediate reaction?
It really doesn't change that reality, honestly. We had said that this was a life or death, or at least quality of life reality for too many. Aubrey was far more articulate about that than I can be. And so we wanted to get at this first. You heard in our budget address a couple of weeks ago that we're still committed to adult use recreational marijuana, to working with the legislature. This doesn't really impact that. This is a sort of a here and now health crisis. I'm still confident that we'll get to that, but it's not today's business. I want to thank everybody for coming. I particularly want to thank the families and patients and folks who are here with us today and advocates. So thank you all, beginning with Aubrey and many others in the room. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Really well done.
Thank you.
Jackie, well done. Don't leave us away.